My name is Kadir and I'm your host for this session. And we will be discussing an interesting topic on Fintech, enabling business without borders. And with me today, three gentlemen. Their names were mentioned earlier. These are gentlemen that are at the helm of key Fintech companies in ASEAN and who have assisted millions of customers, especially those that are unbanked and underserved. I will let them to first introduce themselves. Maybe we'll start with Hann. Quick introductions of you.
Thanks, Nizam. Good to see you all here. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks to the Wild Digital team for the invite. My name is Hann Liew. I'm a co-founder and director here at Jirnexu. Jirnexu is an ASEAN fintech company founded in 2012. And we operate mainly in Malaysia and Vietnam. We had an operation in Indonesia as well previously. So lots to talk about there. Malaysian-based folks will know our online financial marketplace, ringgitplus.com. We've served over 1 million customers here. And we integrate with most banks and insurance companies to offer consumer financial services direct to consumer digitally. So that's a bit of me and what we do.
Got it. Thank you, Hann. Swaroop, Shah from Validus Capital.
Hi. Hey, thanks for inviting me on this session. I'm Swaroop Shah, CEO of Validus Vietnam. Just to give you a quick background, Validus is a peer-to-peer SME lending platform operating in Southeast Asia. We are a 5-year-old company, started off in Singapore in 2015. We are now operational in Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, and we're starting Thailand very soon before the end of this year. In terms of our business size, we have done close to about 600 million of disbursements to SMEs across the markets. And we are the largest peer-to-peer lending platform in Singapore for the last 3 years.
Thank you, Swaroop. And last but not least, Hendra Kwik from PAYFAZZ. Hendra, can you unmute yourself?
Thank you, Kadir, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Hendra, the co-founder and CEO of PAYFAZZ. PAYFAZZ is basically the largest branchless banking platform in Southeast Asia. We focus on serving the people without banking access that was spread across almost 20,000 islands across Indonesia. PAYFAZZ was founded roughly around 4 years ago, in 2016. In the course of 4 years, we managed to grow our number of branchless banking agents from 10 to almost 100,000 locations today, to more than 100,000 locations today, and from serving a couple hundred users to almost 10 million monthly active users. So we have connected to major bill payment providers and banks in Indonesia to facilitate bill payment, money transfer, and lending access for villagers in Indonesia.
Got it. Thank you.
And yeah, happy to share in this session today.
Sure. And we'll get back to you, especially questions that are related to Indonesia. Maybe we'll start by a macro view on impact of fintech, especially on the unbanked and the underserved. It's a huge opportunities. Han, maybe we'll start with you. How do you envision these cross-border opportunities through fintech?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. I think the first thing to do is that I'm pleased to be here with Hendra and Swaroop. And I think if we separate kind of fintech into two broad groups, right? The first is fintech enablers, and the second are fintech disruptors. So meaning the people who enable the existing incumbent players such as banks, insurance companies, investment houses to upgrade themselves or catch up to the digital age, and the disruptors. So the folks who start disintermediating, start offering services directly to consumers and businesses that banks, insurance companies, and investment houses used to do. And I mean, in fintech specifically, cross-border. Most of the countries in the developing world, certainly in Southeast Asia, with the exception of Singapore, face similar kind of structural themes, right? Two big themes: large number of unbanked and underbanked, underinsured, and underbanked people. So even if you have a bank account, you might not have banking services, right? So that's one big theme. The second big theme, and it's common across the majority of the regional markets, particularly here in Southeast Asia. Second big theme: much higher penetration of data and smartphone access. So you've got this, on one hand, limited access to financial services and huge access to the internet, right? So this means a couple of things, right? The first is that fintech stands to be an equal, if not have a better chance to compete in this kind of land space, right? Because the digital land space, banks have an app, you have an app, insurers have an app, you have an app. you don't have to compete on the best locations anymore because those don't exist digitally, right? So that's kind of big theme. And second is that the solutions you create in one country tend to be able to be ported to at least at the consumer and business level to the next country. I'm not talking about regulator, not talking about integratability with incumbents, but at least the solutions you create solve the same problems across markets. So for me, that's cross-border capability there.
Thank you, Hann, on that. In solving problems across multiple countries, and you speak about the adaptability of fintech solutions to do that. Swaroop, since Validus is ASEAN, almost ASEAN-wide, Hann mentioned about regulators and to be cross-border. You've done this. How do you maneuver and work with regulators, and how regulators should respond to this level of disruption?
Very quickly, I'll just touch upon the market we're trying to address for the segment Validus is operating. In Southeast Asia alone, there is a gap in terms of the requirement by the SMEs for funding versus what the banks can offer is close to about $320 billion. Singapore has got about 20 billion. Indonesia, there's a gap of 75 billion. Vietnam, 20 billion. Thailand, 41 billion. So that's a huge gap, that is waiting to be addressed. In terms of regulations, we started off with Singapore way back in 2014. And the fact that we have been regulated and we've got a license through the MAS.
MAS, okay.
Much more in a structured manner, given how Singapore operates in terms of the regulations and compliance. In Indonesia, it is again split in two parts, where you have a licensing and a registration, where you have to make sure that you get the initial license, work for about a year, then you apply for your registration. In Vietnam, where we are operating, unfortunately, there is no regulation as we are talking. But the SBV, who is the regulators in this market, are coming out with the sandbox sometime by second quarter of next year. So I think every country has got a different way of approaching in terms of how the regulations are going to be maneuvered. But given the fact that we have been regulated by the strictest of regulators, which is Singapore, I think as a business, we are well covered and ready for what's coming in Vietnam.
Got it. And your experience has been pleasant throughout.
Absolutely. See, I think most importantly, as long as you're able to adhere to the regulations, I think should not be a problem in any market you're getting into.
Thank you, Swaroop. Pak Hendra, I promised to get back to you on questions on Indonesia. A market that's so large and so diversified and so complex. That's predominantly unbanked in certain areas in Indonesia. You are looking at a market, and you probably would have difficulties in applying customers acquisition. One island may differ from another. How much would you have to invest, especially in educating them, or does it just happen naturally, given that these markets being young, being digital natives? How did you start that journey, and how do you cover Indonesia?
Yeah, thanks, Kadir. I think there are 3 points that I would like to underline here. I think first, because the nature of Indonesia, like what you mentioned, we have 6 core islands and more than 20,000 small islands identified in the statistics. And like what you said, that every region actually has their own culture and sometimes the local language. That's the first fact. The second fact is that, totally agree with you, that the population is very young. They are mostly digitally native because of the increasing penetration of smartphone and internet. So they are very digital first. And lastly, for the last 100 years, it's been very difficult to bring banking access to the hand of everyone in Indonesia. Because first, actually banking distribution is still very limited. There are many banks who open their branch only in big cities because the unit economics only makes sense there. Exactly. And there's only a little of people are educated enough to use complicated banking products. So what we do with PAYFAZZ is that we try to address those 3 concerns by building branchless banking agent. Because branchless banking agent is very local. They are deeply embedded into the societies. They understand the local behavior and language, and it helps us being close to the customers and being trusted. And secondly, because our nature as a fintech is digital first, we try to adapt ourselves, our products, to fit the digital native characters, as well as the behavior and the product that was demanded by the customer. And of course, education is very important. And that's also where our agents differentiate ourselves from other fintech players who may be playing pure application pure application approach or playing in the city.
Good, great. Tell us some examples. I mean, you're working with these agents actually. As you go down to the hinterlands of Indonesia, were there any challenges?
Yeah. So maybe I'll give myself as the example. I was actually the product of the village in Indonesia. I grew up in a very small hometown called Jambi. My mom is a villager as well. My mom has never had bank account in her life.
I've been to Jambi, to be honest.
Yeah. There are very good local foods there. Even the language is very localized. The people are very localized. We have specific culture and behavior that maybe people in Java will not understand. And my mom stole the money in the pig. It's not pig. It's like the can or in the cupboard. She never had a bank account, to be honest. But what I understand is that my mom is very close to the neighborhood stores. She always trusts this neighborhood store for everything, for buying groceries, etc. So the whole idea of PAYFAZZ is that how to turn this neighborhood store to be someone who can convince my mom to move the money from the cabinet and the can into the bank account and use it for future investment to send me to the college, etc. So I think that really relates with my personal experience, and that's what we are trying to do. Replicate that model, started with 1 location to 10 locations in the first day of PAYFAZZ, and now we are trying to bring this to 10 million of people every month. And what we aim for the future is to replicate this for hundreds of millions of unbanked in Indonesia.
It's just amazing to hear the level of empowerment given to every single level of people across Indonesia. Switching to Swaroop, same questions as well on the issues and challenges that you face in Vietnam. Similar setting, less regulation, perhaps. What did you encounter?
See, I think given the stage at which Vietnam is in terms of the fintech evolution or the revolution, if you will, there are some basic issues which Hendra just mentioned. The top of the pile would be lack of awareness. So I think there needs to be a lot of education that is going into training and educating the SMEs to inform them and let them know about the alternate financing options that are available in the market today. Because traditionally, the only thing they would probably know would be a finance company or a financial institution, or if not, they probably go to a money lender. There has to be a lot more focus given on educating the market, because there's a huge potential in Vietnam as we speak. Second biggest problem is the lack of data or the lack of structured data. Right, the data available here is all over the place, and for a fintech to be successful, you need to probably have a very structured data, which has to be analyzed using machine learning, using a data science team which is available in our Singapore office, and to see how we can make good use of this data for giving better services to the SME. Third, again, as is the regulatory changes. Yes, different regulatory environments in each of the country we are in. However, having started the business in Singapore, as I mentioned earlier, which means that we already have a good governance framework as a baseline that we are able to adapt from the various regulatory requirements. So this for me are the top top issues.
Thank you, Swaroop. I'm switching the gear back to Hann. Indonesia, Vietnam are great examples of developing markets with a large populations that are still unbanked. Malaysia, 95% banked populations, but still a large chunk of underserved community. How does Ringgit Plus play a role in reaching out to this underserved? Per capita income is not well distributed, right? And there's still a large chunk of people that are not able to have access. You got bank accounts, but zero inside, right? Microfinancing, micro investments, and all this.
Yep.
Your story, Hann.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think you nailed it exactly right, which is there is a difference between being unbanked, right, which is I just have no access to banking, as Hendra pointed out, and being underbanked, which is a KPI met in terms of I've got this guy in the banking system, but that doesn't mean he is got banking services, including credit. I don't have access to credit. I have a bank account, but through various reasons, even in Malaysia, like many consumers don't have access to credit, right? Because credit models are built for 20, 30 years ago, not built for the digital age, not built for consumer behaviors digitally, right? For that example. Second is, I may have a bank account, but have zero access to basic insurance services, right? my only experience of insurance is, through agent insurance. And that, for me, that's a very limited experience. So how we're
really old, Hann. Okay, sorry.
I mean, how we're solving it is, look, like when I tell people, look, we're a digital first company, we're Ringgit Plus. The assumption is that, oh, you service millennials and urbanites who understand how to use smartphones. And I tell a lot of people, look, actually, you do the stats. Plenty of our audience are in suburban, rural areas. Why? Because it takes them half an hour to get to their nearest bank branch. It takes them 45 minutes or an hour to their nearest agent. It's there. They probably spend half an hour driving once upon a time ago to open the account, but to actually access those services becomes very difficult. And the second part about what we do is to make choice available, which is frequently in a kind of in a pre-digital world, you're limited to what banking services you can access physically around you. But now with someone like Ringgit Plus saying, hey, look, you can access any bank nationally, regardless of whether they have a branch in your area, you can open an account, you can get a loan, you can get insurance from any provider. For me, that's a key access point, right? The more choice you have, the better it is. You're going to make a good decision that is good for your financial situation, not just from a single provider. So that's what essentially we're doing.
And when as a consumer, I just love the fact that there are options that I can choose from, and giving me that opportunity to select which one that's most suitable to me.
Yeah. So I mean, the idea is to remove those kind of micro monopolies, right? Yeah, I have a monopoly because I'm in Ijok Town. I'm the only bank there, for example. But having Ringgit Plus allows you to access all other banks other than just that little bank branch there. So that's the kind of thing we do.
Okay, speaking about challenges, and we spoke about challenges and how do we overcome it. We can't run away from the biggest challenge of 2020, none other than COVID-19. Yeah. So, Hendra, how is this? How has it been impacting you? I mean, I've heard a lot of stories of fintech somehow has accelerated adoptions even more during COVID-19. Is that the same experience that you are having right now in Indonesia?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely impact. The impact to the fintech, we mentioned to the fintech itself, I think in general is accelerated, but I think fintech is very wide, right? You will see fintech distributed into lending, bill payment, transfer, and in deposit or investment. So maybe at some part it will increase. For example, I'll give you the case that maybe the bill payment spending, right? I think along the COVID, people are trying to reduce their bills. So they're trying to reduce their bills. So it will be reflected in your bill payment side that the amount of orders may not be as much as normal days because people are trying to save money. But then the amount of payment failure also reduce a bit because people try to save money to survive, right? Mm-hmm. To survive their household. But on the other side, the amount of money that people start to maybe send to save inside the saving account is increasing because they are trying to hold as many reserves of cash as possible. And the third part, the amount of money that is invested also increasing. For example, I think we have offering of people that can store their money and get some interest, and we saw some increase with that. And the last part, of course, the highest spike is of course on lending. We saw that there are so many people and small businesses who ask for access for loan. It's crazy. The CAC dropped significantly. The amount of applications increased significantly among the fillets or even somewhere outside the fillets, also increasing very highly. But you have to be careful, right, to decide if you're going to give the loan or not. Because I think lending part in the normal day is already high. In the COVID situation, it's even much higher. But the problem about lending business is it's not about acquisition, but most of the time it's about how you mitigate the risk. So I think the effect is mixed, but of course, in the whole fintech spectrum, the generic trend is highly increasing with specific trend on its category of banking services.
Got it. Thank you, Hendra. Swaroop and Hann, any words from you with regards to the impact of COVID-19? How is this helping you or not helping you?
I think I completely agree with what Hendra was saying, that the demand for the loans, especially for the lending, fintech and lending space is concerned, has gone up. But it's not about how much you want to lend. You have to be very, very mindful of the fact that you have to make sure your risk frameworks are extremely strong and you are not going berserk in terms of lending, because end of the day, it's all about the money that is going to come back. And given COVID, there has been a lot of concerns, typically for the SMEs, in terms of getting back their payments. On the other hand, I think COVID has actually given a perfect playground for fintech like us, because we are better equipped, and better equipped to adapt to the current situation, because we are a cloud-based fintech. And that is exactly the basis of why you have fintechs mushrooming. You do not need a big office. You don't require different branches. You should be able to operate from anywhere, as long as you have the required processes and systems in place. So I think, while yes, there is a challenge in terms of the business from an external perspective, I think from an internal operational perspective, I think it's a perfect recipe for a fintech to test how good, bad, ugly they are.
Just a small piece to add there around fintech and COVID. I think I guess for the various investors on the call too, which is not all two fintechs are alike, right? Which is, there are some fintechs who operate in the enablement process for O2O, and those were terribly impacted because there was no O2O being offline to online, trying to enable the likes of agents to go digital, via NAT, iPads, but those activities were stopped, right? So fintechs who were involved in that felt the damage, and it depends on the product. So, for example, if you were a fintech focused on discretionary spending, so like payments, credit cards, you have seen drops in volumes. If you were a fintech focused in and we saw that ourselves, like in unsecured financing, you have seen a tremendous uplift in volumes. Again, like what we saw. If you're a fintech focused on e-commerce insurance, you have seen tremendous uptick in volume during this time, right? Nobody can see your agent, for example. So I think it depends on the nature of the fintech you're talking about. Fortunately for us, we see it across the spectrum, so we can see dips and troughs across the board. And that's how we are able to say, it depends on where you are.
It depends on where you are. It's how you pivoting your business accordingly. Yeah. All right. I'm mindful of times as well. Maybe last words from three of you, your hope and aspirations. And we've been talking a lot about financial inclusion. Your hope and aspirations in addressing financial inclusions in ASEAN. Hendra?
Yeah. Okay. I think from my background of growing up in the village, my family don't have that much saving. My family business is just my dad has one store, and that's been the case for the last 30 years. Now, after I understand fintech, I know that actually the hard-earned money from the villagers can be managed in such a way that one day when they grow old and their kids get bigger, they should be able to have more savings if they understand financial access. And for the store that maybe only exists as one store for their lifetime, they may be able to expand to at least 2 or 3 stores with appropriate capital access from fintech like Validus or even our lending arm. So I believe that the future is there with the technology and the financial service that is more open to change, especially after COVID. We foresee a brighter future, not only for the fintech players and the incumbent banking and financial service industry, but also the opportunity to create a brighter future for the whole population in Southeast Asia, especially the unbanked. And we do have a big hope and mission for Indonesia unbanked. Yep. Yeah, we look to unlock this in the next.
All right. Future. Yes. And I just love when it's real life example. Swaroop, your hope and aspiration.
If you ask me, I think there is a huge potential, as Hendra was mentioning, especially for our line of business as we go into 2021, where especially for Vietnam, we are not as badly impacted, in terms of the local market is concerned. We are fully open right now, and I think there is a huge potential that is awaiting for Vietnam in 2021. I think as a part of financial inclusion, we have already started, as I mentioned, that educating your SMEs, trying to reach out to as many people as possible, and try to get them into the banking sector via fintechs like Validus. And I think that's going to be a great journey for the next few years as we go into 2021.
All right, thank you. Last 30 seconds, Hann.
Sure. Okay, so expectation. Look, I think fintechs will continue to drive margins tighter for the industry. That's a good thing in general, right? Because better for consumers and businesses who are accessing services. But my hope is that these fintechs, including ours, don't forget about 2 key things, right? Which is financial literacy and education of the people we serve. and our role in driving that. And the second is not rely on regulatory arbitrage to drive those margins, right? The regulatory framework is there for a reason. Don't rely on that. If you rely on that, as you get bigger, you're going to be regulated. So that's kind of one expectation and two hopes.
Got it. Thank you. And it has been wonderful, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being on this panel. And I wish all of you the best. And 2021 is just a couple of months away, less than a couple of months away. All the best. And thank you, Wild Digital, for hosting all of us.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.